That's a familiar scene. But how did we get here? How did New South Wales get to such a bad place? The Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, is adamant that there is only one thing she considers when making decisions.
Health advice, health advice, health advice, health advice, health advice, health advice, the health advice, health advice, health advice, health advice.
The government knew it was dealing with the Delta variant right from the start, and they kept saying how dangerous it was. But even with that, even in those early days, what did the government do? A sprinkle of mask mandates here and there, with the first partial lockdown only happening 10 days into the outbreak.
Oh look, it's scary, and Dr. Chant always advises myself and the Minister that some people are just bigger spreaders than others, and it's random. We know the virus is extremely contagious. We know that a fleeting passing, as has been evidenced in the 2 cases, a fleeting passing is all it takes. And the randomness of that is what makes it scary. And we know from the number of cases that we've seen already in this particular cluster that in some instances the exchanges have been scaringly fleeting. Literally people coming within, not even physically touching each other.
So my question is, was the health advice actually followed? Or did all the gold standard talk and the state bashing get in the way of a proper decision? If you ask Gladys, she'll tell you the health advice was followed to the letter.
Why didn't this lockdown come in sooner?
Look, we have to follow the best health advice when we get that health advice, and that's exactly what we've done.
Did you delay the decision to call a lockdown because you wanted to keep your reputation as being the Premier who keeps open and looks after the economy?
Can I say very, very confidently and strongly that any success New South Wales has had to date is because our government has to the letter followed the health advice.
But here's the thing. When you ask the same question over and over again, the truth comes out. What becomes clear is that the New South Wales government does not want to be questioned and doesn't want to be transparent.
You'd have to say that New South Wales has always struck the balance of trying to make sure that the risk profile is correctly assessed and not placing too many restrictions on our residents.
So whilst we do have this current outbreak, we've managed to keep everything open, and that's our intention. And that's why I want to assure the community, please do not stress. There is no reason why anyone should feel concerned. Quite the contrary, please know that we have the privilege and luxury of having phenomenal health experts giving us the advice, but also in New South Wales, we will balance that advice with the needs of people to work, to live a normal life. Every time we make a decision in the pandemic, it's twofold. It's yes, to keep our citizens safe and healthy, but it's also to give our businesses the best opportunities moving forward. What I know is that we have some of the best health experts, and not just health experts, but best advisors and contributions from the private sector, from business, contributing to the New South Wales government's ability to make decisions.
But did she recommend a lockdown before you actually did it? As in, were there days?
Not that I recollect. No, I don't think that's true. No,
so you didn't delay.
No, there was no delay. No, on each and every occasion we respond to our public health team. But keep in mind, I think what people don't understand is the public health team, and then there's the health team, who also look at mental health issues, and then there's the economic team who also look at trying to keep the state's economy going, particularly for mental health and just generally for the economy and jobs. So like every difficult decision, it's a balance.
A balance, keeping things open, advice from the private sector, the economy team. It doesn't sound quite the same as actioning the health advice to the letter. So it's understandable when people start to question the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kerry Chant. Did she give advice to lockdown earlier?
I've been told that you are in agreement with Commonwealth health officials that this lockdown needs to go harder, and you have expressed that over several weeks to the Premier, and she is not on the same page as you on this. What is your comment?
Can I just indicate the fact that the Premier is very committed to achieving the same outcomes. We have a shared vision which is high vaccination coverage and very low levels of community transmission. I can't restate that. I can't comment any further than say The Premier, in all my discussions with her, is absolutely committed to increasing vaccine coverage and getting low community transmission.
Why shut in Melbourne and New Zealand that aren't shut here, Dr. Chan? Why is 25% of construction only open in Melbourne? Why can't you play golf in Melbourne? Why is there a curfew in Melbourne? They've got 20 cases a day, there's 633 here. Why haven't we got totals here, except the Premier stubbornly refuses to introduce them?
So look, I'm not going to respond apart from saying that the Premier and I are both committed passionately to seeing the case numbers decline.
The Premier said that she was handed this advice last night. Are there any measures in this at all that you've recommended before last night?
Look, I think what's important to focus on is the fact that the Premier at all points has followed, asked us to provide the best advice, and I am totally committed to these additional measures. I think it is so important that we focus together on the mammoth task ahead of us to drive these numbers down. And I totally am behind this.
So you recommended some of it before last night, is that right?
The task that we had was to come up looking at all of the existing measures, what additional measures would occur. And as I said to you, clearly a lot of ideas are floated, but the evidence for curfews is not strong. But as I said, because of intelligence, the police commissioner and I considered that the intelligence we were getting, that it may be effective and may assist.
Basically, we can't get a straight answer. And you would think now more than ever, transparency is so important. But anyway, that was pretty much it. And for the rest of the video, I wanted to play a few clips from the Public Accountability Committee. Essentially, this committee is holding an ongoing inquiry into how the government has managed a pandemic. So enjoy.
On what date specifically was the advice first provided to the Health Minister on locking down?
Well, it's not that easy, Ms. Sharp. I mean, I know you haven't been the Health Minister, but when you're in the middle of a COVID crisis, I spend pretty well every day here in the health building, and we discuss these issues. Dr. Chan, last night she rang me, I think, or I rang her at about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock last night. We talked through the night. We talked first thing in the morning. You have an expectation that some document appears. No, it doesn't. It's a moving feast. And Dr. Chan is expressing the concerns that are raised by her public health teams. It's not just her. She has another 12 public health teams in various areas. So there's constant discussion going on about what is happening as cases are rolling in. And as they roll in, the classic example, which is just before...
Minister, I would ask that you... it is a WebEx hearing. It's very difficult. We have very limited time. And I would ask... The question was put to Dr. Chant, and I think it's right that we get an answer from Dr. Chant.
Well, Dr. Chant gave her answer. And can I remind you that we have volunteered to come here. We don't acknowledge that you have the capacity to have us here. We've come here to try and assist, and we're going to give you the information you need. So you might remember
the question was put to Dr. Chant, and if you would allow Dr. Chant to answer.
I will answer the question that I'm now talking about. Thank you. Not up to you to determine who's going to answer the questions. I'm the Minister, and I'll answer it. On the 23rd of June, we had the West Hoxton birthday party, which was a major case.
Excuse me, Minister, can I just stop you there? Minister, we're not trying to catch you out. There's no trick here. We're specifically asking very important advice from the public health officials and from Dr. Chant. These are the answers to the questions that we're after. We have heard you every day admirably at press conferences outlining most of this material. Everyone here has paid very close attention to that. We are very concerned, though, to understand, given that millions of people are in lockdown at the moment and it's very difficult for everyone, we're trying to understand what happened. So
I'm trying to help. You just spent more time than it would have taken me to explain it, Penny. I'll go back to what I was saying. On the 23rd of June,
Minister, I have questions for Dr. Chant that I'd like to get through. And I would really like it if you would allow her to answer those, please.
Well, she has, and I'm now telling you that on the 23rd of June, there were 8 cases linked to a birthday party at West Hoxton. a person who had worked in the nail salon at Double. Sorry, either I get to finish the answers or I'm not going to bother. Seriously, I've got to...
Minister, I just want to ask one question before our time expires. Minister, I'd just like to ask one question to Dr. Chant before our time expires.
Finish the answer to my question.
And Minister, I'm just going to ask one question to Dr. Chant. Have you provided recommendations on stronger measures than what the Minister and Government have adopted?
Can I just tell you, Dr. Chant gives a range of advice which is discussed with the rest of the public health team and the health team here in New South Wales. And that advice then goes to the crisis cabinet. And involved in crisis cabinet is the economic issues, the mental health issues, the public health issues, the operational side. And so when you say stronger, that's like saying, oh, I want a rig of steel. Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? It just seems to me that...
thank you, Minister. I think the context is useful.
The first speaker said this wasn't in some sort of gotcha moment. All you're trying to do is carry on like...
Minister, the context is useful. The question was directed to Dr. Chant.
Well, if you can't...
Look, I appreciate the context, but I also note the short amount of time we have today. So I appreciate the context, and I'd now invite Dr. Chant to answer the question.
So obviously in controlling case numbers, we want to see the effective reproductive rate down beneath 1. And so
why won't you release the advice then that Dr. Chant provided the Cabinet to assure this committee and to assure the public that you listened to the Chief Health Officer in the middle of a pandemic to lock down when we locked down?
Kate, you didn't just listen, because she just told you quite clearly that we responded as quickly as humanly a government could. So I'm sorry, you're just wrong, plain wrong. And we're not going to release crisis cabinet documents or cabinet documents to you. If you want to be part of the government, Kate, join the government, but you're not.
The Premier repeatedly says that all of the decisions the government has taken has been on the basis of health advice. Yet it is apparent from the discussion we've had today that that's just one part of the matrix of information relied upon when the government has made decisions about timing of lockdowns, extension of lockdowns. Will we get some clear written advice from you or some clear statements from the government about what other factors other than the public health advice have been taken into account in the decision-making to date and, importantly, in the decision-making going forward?
And that's why we stand up every day, David, for an hour with the journalists who ask those questions. We've done it for more than a year. And every day we talk about the economic issues, the mental health issues, the educational issues, the transport issues, the police issues. And I'm sorry, if you haven't been listening, that is not our issue. And that's the end of today's hearing. Thank you very much.
Well, Minister, I just simply note that we repeatedly have the Premier saying that the decision is all taken in accordance with the public health advice, yet clearly there are other issues.
But right now, this is a bit silly. An hour and a half in the middle of a pandemic. It'll be the first time in history that in the middle of a war, a parliamentary committee is called an inquiry to ask us, well, how did you make your decisions? We've told you what we can. We've given you the best we can. But now it's just getting a bit silly. If you've got questions to the Premier, ask the Premier. Don't ask me. Okay?
We will.
Minister, I can assure you the committee will continue to do its work and continue to do our job of trying to hold the government to an account. We won't have a history lesson about the way parliamentary oversight has happened in other moments of crisis, but I simply note you were wrong. And I also note that the Premier of Victoria made himself available for the better part of a day to the oversight committee there. Many people look to the level of transparency in Victoria as a higher standard than we've seen in New South Wales. So I hope that we can have a more productive exchange at a future hearing.